"I'm going to get you moving again," the mechanic told the heiress, his eyes drifting from her paralyzed legs to her furious face. Her laughter rang out, harsh and jagged against the shop's metal walls, unaware that this dusty man was about to rewrite her entire future. It started when the Bentley Continental sputtered, 3 ugly gasps, before giving up the ghost right in the center of the city's most exclusive garage lot. Inside the cabin, Regina Montalbán slammed her palm against the leather steering wheel while Elena, her assistant, scrambled out to flag down help. Neither woman realized that this mechanical failure was the first domino in a chain that would completely upend the lives of everyone in that parking lot. Santiago Herrera caught the sound of the dying engine from the maintenance pit. He was 12 hours into a shift, grease stained to his elbows and every muscle screaming. The calendar said he was 34, but after last night his bones felt closer to 50. His daughter Camila had burned with a fever all night, leaving him running on 2 hours of broken sleep and black coffee. Climbing out of the pit, he spotted the stranded luxury beast at the entrance and felt a headache coming on. Today was about to go sideways. "Santo!" yelled Ruben, the floor manager, using that high-pitched, panic-laced tone he saved for VIPs. "Get over here, now!" Santiago walked toward the commotion, wiping his hands on a rag that was arguably dirtier than his skin. 6 other mechanics watched from their bays, trading silent glances that carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken warnings. Everybody recognized that car, and everyone knew the owner, Regina Montalbán, the Iron Lady of the national auto industry, owner of 47 dealerships, worth hundreds of millions, and notoriously impossible to please. The Bentley's rear door clicked open. Elena hopped out first, deploying a portable ramp with the robotic efficiency of someone who had performed this drill 10,000 times. Then she appeared. Regina rolled down the ramp in her motorized chair, wearing the expression of a queen expecting the Red Sea to part. She wore a razor-sharp blazer, understated jewelry that cost more than the building, and a look of permanent boredom that is the specific privilege of the ultra-wealthy. "Who runs this circus?" Her voice sliced through the humid air. Ruben practically tripped over his own feet, rushing to greet her. "Miss Montalbán, what an absolute privilege. I'm Ruben Estrada, the manager. Whatever you need—" "Save the speeches." Regina cut him dead without even turning her head. "My car is a paperweight. Fix it, now." "Absolutely. Right away. Let me page our master technician from the downtown branch. He can be here in—" "I don't have time to wait for a commuter." Regina pivoted her chair, scanning the workshop floor like a general surveying a disappointing platoon. "Who is the most qualified mechanic standing in this room right now?" Dead silence. The crew studied their boots. No one volunteered to stand in the firing line. No one except Santiago, who stood by the pit, watching the spectacle with a strange mix of fatigue and pity. One of the junior techs pointed a shaking finger at him. "Herrera, he's the best. Been here 15 years. Regina spun her chair to face him. Her eyes raked over him, lingering on the oil stains and the exhaustion, radiating that specific brand of disgust the elite have for the working class. "Him?" She scoffed. "That's your top talent?" Santiago didn't take the bait. He walked slowly to the Bentley, tuning out the suffocating tension in the room. He popped the hood and leaned in, listening to the engine with the focus of a heart surgeon. "It's the electronic injection system," he said after 30 seconds. "One sensor is fried. I can have you back on the road in 2 hours. Regina let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "The official dealership told me ordering that part takes a week." "They're right, assuming you want to replace the whole system." "I don't. I can rebuild the original sensor. It'll run better than new." Regina watched him, her expression shifting from disdain to suspicion. "And you expect me to trust a $500,000 machine to some grease monkey in a roadside shop?" Santiago finally looked up, locking eyes with her. There was no fear in his face, just the calm authority of a man who knows exactly what he's doing. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this car is just metal, wires, and code. I fixed hundreds of them. If you don't trust my hands, call a tow truck and take it somewhere else." A gasp rippled through the garage. "You didn't talk to Regina Montalbán like that, ever." Elena stepped forward, looking terrified. Ruben looked like he was about to stroke out, but Regina just tilted her head like a predator spotting prey that might actually fight back. "You've got nerve," she said slowly. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." "I'm a mechanic, lady. That's it. Do you want me to fix your car or not?" Regina let the silence hang heavy in the air, an uncomfortable eternity. Finally, she gave a sharp, dry nod. "Get it done, and it had better be flawless." Santiago got to work without uttering another syllable. The workshop slowly fell back into its usual rhythm, though every grease monkey on the floor kept one eye glued to the spectacle. Regina had decided to wait right there, a move that, according to her assistant Elena, was completely unheard of. For the first hour, Regina ran her empire from a smartphone, barking orders and fielding calls while Elena scribbled furiously in a notebook at her side. Yet, every few minutes, her gaze drifted towards Santiago, watching his hands manipulate the engine components with the precision of a surgeon. It was during one of those glances that the shift happened. Santiago reached high for a wrench, his shirt riding up just enough to expose a jagged, ancient scar tracing down his spine. Regina's eyes narrowed instantly. There was something about that mark that triggered a distant, unsettling memory. "That scar," she blurted out, cutting off her own conference call mid-sentence. "Where did you get that?" Santiago stiffened visibly, yanking his shirt down in a blur of motion. "Old accident. Years ago." "What kind of accident?" "The kind I don't talk about." The tension between them spiked, crackling like a live wire. Elena looked back and forth, baffled by her boss's sudden obsession with a common laborer's medical history. Regina chose not to push it, but the steel in her expression softened into something unreadable, a shift only Elena, with her 15 years of service, could spot. With 20 minutes left on the repair, Regina's phone chirped with a specific, dread-inducing ringtone. It was the call she'd been dodging all morning. "Dr. Aguirre," she answered, her voice tight. "Do you have the results?" The conversation lasted barely 3 minutes, but by the time she hung up, something inside Regina had shattered. Her composure, usually armor-plated, crumbled to reveal deep fissures of despair. Elena rushed to her side. "Ma'am, what did the doctor say?" Regina didn't answer right away. Her manicured hands trembled against the wheelchair controls. When she finally spoke, it was a ghost of a whisper. He says the recovery window is closing. If there's no significant progress in the next 6 months, the nerve damage becomes permanent. I will never walk again." The world around them seemed to freeze. Elena covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Nearby, mechanics shuffled their feet, looking at the floor, unsure how to handle the raw emotion. But it was Santiago who did the unthinkable. He dropped his tools, wiped the grease from his palms, and walked straight up to Regina. He knelt down, bringing himself eye to level with her, and locked gazes. "Mrs. Montalbán," he said, his voice startlingly gentle. "I can help you." Regina looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "Excuse me?" "I said I can help you walk again." The silence that followed was so absolute you could hear the heartbeat of every man in the room. Then, Regina did something nobody had seen her do in years. She laughed. But it wasn't her polite society chuckle. It was a deep, jagged bark of laughter bordering on hysteria, ripping its way out of some dark corner of her soul. A sound born of disbelief, agony, and the bitter cynicism of 1,000 crushed hopes. "You?" she gasped, tears of ridicule streaming down her face. "A grease monkey is going to succeed where the world's top neurosurgeons failed? What, are you going to tune me up like a busted radiator?" A few others started chuckling nervously. Reuben giggled anxiously. Other mechanics smirked. Elena stood frozen, neither laughing nor intervening. Santiago stayed on his knees, stone-faced, letting the mockery wash over him. "Laugh all you want," he said quietly when the noise died down. "But I know something you don't. Something about your crash that your fancy doctors never figured out." Regina's laughter died instantly. "What did you say?" "Your accident was 3 years ago. Your car went off a cliff on the coastal highway. The doctors called the spinal damage irreversible, but they missed a crucial detail." Regina leaned forward, her face draining of all color. "How do you know that? How could you possibly know the specifics?" Santiago slowly rose to his feet. The submissive worker was gone. In his place stood a man with eyes full of old ghosts and an iron will. "Because I was there that night, Mrs. Montalbán. I'm the one who pulled you out of the wreckage before the fuel tank blew." The entire shop went deathly quiet. Regina looked like she'd been slapped. That's impossible," she whispered. "The police report said an unidentified bystander saved me, but they never found him. I hired investigators for months. No one found a trace." "Because I didn't want to be found." Santiago cut her off mid-sentence. "I had my motives back then, but fate's got a funny way of circling back, and I'm not running this time." He spun around and headed for the Bentley, leaving Regina sitting there, completely frozen in disbelief. "Ride's ready in 15 minutes, he tossed over his shoulder, casual as if discussing rain. "Once I'm done, we need to have a serious chat." Regina fought the urge to scream, to demand he stop and explain himself right this second. But her voice failed her. Deep down, past a mental block she'd held for 3 years, a dormant memory started clawing its way out. A blurry nightmare of that horrific night, a face amidst the inferno, iron-grip hands tearing her from twisted steel, and a voice that whispered while carrying her away from the burning wreckage. "Hang in there, you're gonna make it. I promise, I'll get you walking again." The exact same promise the grease monkey just made. Elena saw her boss shaking like a leaf. "Ma'am, you okay? Should I call the doctor?" Regina just shook her head, eyes glued to Santiago's back as he tweaked the engine. "Him," she whispered, the word meant for nobody but herself. "That man is the ghost I've spent 3 years chasing." For the first time since the crash, Regina Montalbán felt a twisted mix of hope and dread. If Santiago was the real deal, then everything she thought she knew about that night was a lie, and the truth was a landmine she wasn't ready to step on. Sleep didn't visit Regina that night. Every time she drifted off, shards of memory buried for 3 years floated up like starving spirits. The stench of fuel, the searing heat, and that voice, clear as a bell now, terrifyingly familiar. "You're gonna make it. I'll get you walking again." She bolted upright in her medical bed, gasping for air. The digital clock read 3 in the morning. Outside her mansion's glass walls, the city slumbered while she fought a losing battle against her past. Elena appeared in the doorway moments later, summoned by the motion sensors tracking the room. "Ma'am, can I get you anything?" Regina took a beat. When she spoke, the steel was gone from her voice. She sounded small, human. "I have to find him, Elena. That mechanic holds the key to everything." Come morning, Regina broke a streak she'd held for years. She cleared her entire schedule. The Montalbán empire would have to run itself for a day. The queen had a target to hunt: Santiago Herrera. The Bentley, running smooth as silk after yesterday's fix, rolled up to the garage at 8 sharp. The shop was just waking up. Workers exchanged confused glances, seeing the $1 million ride back so soon. Ruben sprinted to the entrance, looking like he was about to have a heart attack. "Miss Montalbán, is something wrong with the work? I swear, if we missed something..." Regina cut him down with a look. "I need Santiago Herrera, now." Ruben gulped. "Santiago, he's not on the clock yet, ma'am. Shift starts at 9. Then I wait, and she did, for exactly 47 minutes. Parked in the center of the garage floor, she ignored the gawking mechanics and waved away 3 offers of coffee, eyes locked on the door like a sniper. When Santiago finally walked in, he froze for a split second. He didn't look shocked, just tired. "Figured you'd be back," he said, walking to his locker to stow his gear. "Was hoping for a few days head start, though." Regina wheeled her chair to cut him off. 3 years. I spent 3 years hunting you down. I hired the best PIs money could buy. I burned a fortune, looking for my savior. And here you were, turning wrenches 20 minutes from my estate." Santiago looked at her, his eyes heavy with 1,000 secrets. "I never left town, Miss Montalbán. I just made sure people like you couldn't find me." The silence between them was thick enough to cut. The other grease monkeys stopped pretending to work, openly staring at the soap opera unfolding. Santiago scanned the room, feeling the eyes on them. "We can't do this here." "Then pick a spot. I'm not leaving without the truth." Santiago sighed, checked his watch, and got a nervous nod from Ruben. "Park 2 blocks over. It's got benches and privacy." "Can that chair handle the gravel?" "My chair can handle anything you throw at it." Regina's old arrogance flared up instantly. "The real question is whether you've got the stomach for what I'm about to ask." By that time of day, the park was practically a ghost town. Just a handful of mothers chasing toddlers by the swings, too wrapped up in their own bubbles to notice the unlikely pair settling under the shade of an ancient oak. Regina waited, making sure Santiago took his seat on the bench facing her before she settled in. Elena hovered at a respectful distance, close enough to jump in if things went south, but far enough to grant them the illusion of privacy. "Start from the beginning," Regina commanded. "And don't you dare skip a single detail." Santiago clasped his hands together, eyes fixed on the pavement. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "That night, 3 years ago, I was driving along the coastal highway. I was coming back from my wife's grave. She'd passed 6 months earlier, and, well, I wasn't exactly in a good place." He paused, and Regina noticed the slight tremor in his fingers. "That's when I saw the headlights. Your car had smashed through the guardrail. It was tumbling down the ravine. I heard the crunch of metal hitting rock. Then I saw flames licking up from the engine. A cold shiver ran down Regina's spine, or what was left of her nerves that could still feel anything. "I didn't think," Santiago went on. "I just moved. I scrambled down that slope, slipping, falling, getting back up. By the time I reached the wreck, you were out cold. The impact had jammed the door shut. I had to smash the window with my bare fists." Regina's gaze drifted instinctively to his hands. Suddenly, the web of tiny white scars across his knuckles made sense. The fire was spreading fast. I had seconds, not minutes. "I pulled you out however I could, dragged you up the hill." His voice cracked. Santiago squeezed his eyes shut. "That's when the fuel tank blew. The blast threw us both a good few yards. I landed on top of you, shielding you from the fire with my own back." The scar on his back. Finally, Regina understood where it came from. "I took the burn," Santiago pressed on. "But you were alive, unconscious, hurt, but breathing. I dialed emergency services on my cell. I stayed right there until I heard the sirens wailing in the distance, and then I vanished." Regina finished the thought, her voice thin and reedy. "Why?" Santiago finally met her gaze. She could see unshed tears in his eyes. "Because while I was pulling you out, I saw something. Something I wasn't supposed to see." Regina's heart skipped a beat. "What did you see?" "There was someone else in that car, Mrs. Montalbán, someone in the back seat. Someone who walked away on their own 2 feet before I even got down there to save you." Regina's face drained of color, turning deathly pale. "That's impossible. I was alone that night. The police report said—" "The police report says whatever someone paid for it to say." Santiago cut her off gently but firmly. "I saw that person scrambling up the opposite side of the ravine. I watched them disappear into the dark while you were bleeding out in the front seat." Regina felt the earth tilt beneath her. Elena, spotting her mistress's sudden pallor, rushed over. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need your meds?" "I'm fine," Regina lied, though her voice betrayed her. "Just give me a minute." She turned back to Santiago. Her face was a mask of disbelief and rising terror. "Are you telling me someone else was in my car that night? Someone who left me there to die?" "That is exactly what I'm telling you, and there's more." Santiago pulled out his phone, scrolling through his gallery. He turned the screen toward Regina. It was a grainy, low-light shot, but the silhouette was unmistakable, a figure running up the slope away from the burning wreckage. "I snapped this that night. Don't ask me why. Instinct, maybe. Or maybe a part of me knew I'd need insurance one day." Regina studied the photo, her hands trembling violently. The figure was small, slender, feminine. "I can't tell who it is," she admitted, frustration leaking into her voice. "I couldn't either, but I know this. After that night, people started following me, watching my house, asking questions at my job. That's why I bolted before the paramedics arrived. That's why I made sure no one could link me to the rescue, because whoever left you to die in that ravine didn't want any witnesses." The silence that fell between them was heavy, thick with horrific implications. Regina replayed the memories of that night. She remembered leaving a business dinner. She remembered a strange, overwhelming exhaustion hitting her behind the wheel. Then nothing, just darkness until she woke up in the hospital 3 days later. "The doctors told me I was alone," she murmured, "that I fell asleep at the wheel. The doctors just parroted the police report, and that report was rigged." "How can you be so sure?" Santiago pocketed his phone and looked her dead in the eye. "Because 2 weeks after the crash, someone tried to break into my apartment. They left a note on my door. It said, 'Forget what you saw if you want to stay alive.'" Regina felt her stomach turn, a wave of nausea washing over her. She swallowed hard before she could manage a whisper. "Why now? Why wait 3 years to drop a bombshell like this? Why are you telling me today?" Santiago leaned in, his gaze burning with an intensity she hadn't seen before. "Because yesterday I overheard your call with the doctor. When I heard him say you only have 6 months left, I knew silence was no longer an option. Your high-priced specialists missed something. Something I saw with my own eyes the night I pulled you from the wreckage." Regina's breath hitched in her throat. "What are you talking about?" "Your paralysis," he said flatly. "It wasn't caused by the crash." The statement hit her harder than a physical blow to the gut. "Excuse me? What are you saying?" Santiago stood and paced the small room before turning to face her. "My father, Dionisio, served as a military physiotherapist for 30 years. He treated hundreds of soldiers with spinal trauma. He taught me to spot the signs, to read the damage. When I lifted you out of that car, I saw puncture marks on your spine. They didn't come from debris. Regina frowned. What kind of marks? Santiago hesitated as if the truth was too heavy to carry. Needle marks, very specific ones, the kind left by an epidural injection. The ground beneath, Regina's world seemed to dissolve. Someone drugged your spine, Miss Montalbán, likely moments before you got behind the wheel. They paralyzed your legs to make you lose control of the car. Elena let out a stifled gasp. Regina sat frozen, unable to speak or think, staring at the mechanic with eyes wide, reflecting pure, unadulterated horror. That crash wasn't bad luck. Santiago delivered the verdict with the weight of a judge's gavel. It was an attempted assassination, and the person who ordered it is still walking free. Her mind raced through the viper's nest she called a family. Her father, Federico, controlling and manipulative. Her sister, Valentina. Valentina, who had always resented living in Regina's shadow. Or the business partners who had circled her position like vultures for years. Who was capable of this? Who hated her enough to deliberately condemn her to a wheelchair? And more terrifyingly, were they waiting to finish the job? We can prove it, Santiago cut through her spiral of panic. My father can examine you. If I'm right about the injection, he'll be able to identify the compound they used. And if he knows the compound, Regina's voice trembled, wavering between terror and an emotion she hadn't felt in ages. There might be a counter-agent. Hope, that is why I told you I could help you walk. Santiago knelt before her chair, eye level, just as he had in the garage. No magic tricks, no miracles, just the truth. If we find out what they did and who did it, we might be able to reverse the damage. But I need you to trust me. Regina studied him for a long moment. This man, a simple mechanic, had risked his life to save hers. He had carried a dangerous secret for 3 years to stay safe, and now he was offering the one thing her money couldn't buy: answers. Why? She finally asked. Why risk everything for a stranger you don't even know? A sad smile touched Santiago's lips. Because 3 years ago, when I pulled you out of that hell, I made a promise, and I don't break my word. He stood up and offered his hand. Will you come with me to meet my father? Regina looked at his outstretched palm. It was calloused, stained with oil and grease, a stark contrast to the manicured soft hands of the executives and elite doctors she dealt with daily. Yet it looked like the most honest thing anyone had offered her in a long time. She took it. Let's go. Unbeknownst to them, a pair of eyes watched from a sedan parked across the park. A figure dialed a number, whispering just 2 words before hanging up. He spoke. On the other end of the line, those words unleashed a storm that threatened to tear everything apart. Dionisio Herrera lived in a modest neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors actually waved hello in the morning and kids played stickball in the street until dusk. It was a brutal shift from the gated silence and security details Regina was accustomed to. The Bentley pulled up to a small but dignified structure, the air thick with the scent of medicinal herbs from a well-tended garden. Regina eyed the facade with a mix of skepticism and curiosity as Elena lowered the wheelchair ramp. My old man is old school, Santiago warned, opening the door. He doesn't care about titles or bank accounts. If you want his help, you have to earn his respect. I'm not used to auditioning for people, Regina shot back, her armor of arrogance sliding into place. Usually, people beg for my approval. Santiago looked at her, his expression bordering on pity. And that is exactly why you are in this mess, Miss Montalbán, surrounded by leeches who want something from you. My father is different, he doesn't need a thing. Before Regina could get a single word out, the front door flew open and a tiny whirlwind of energy burst onto the porch. Daddy! Grandpa made pancakes. Camila Herrera, 8 years old, was a force of nature, messy pigtails flying everywhere and a smile bright enough to power a city block. She launched herself at Santiago, and he caught her mid-air without flinching, swinging her high and spinning her around until the air was filled with that specific kind of giggling only happy kids can produce. Watching them, Regina felt a sharp pang in her chest. It was an old ache, a ghost she thought she'd exorcised years ago. That level of unconditional affection from a father, that was a foreign language she'd never learned to speak. Easy now, Cammy. We've got company. Santiago set her down gently but didn't let go of her hand. Mind your manners. Camilla's gaze shifted to Regina, then dropped immediately to the chrome and leather of her wheelchair. There wasn't a shred of pity in her eyes, just raw curiosity. Is that motorized? Does it go fast? Can I drive it? Santiago started to hush her. Camila! But Regina felt the corners of her mouth twitching upward. She was actually smiling. For the first time in forever, someone wasn't looking at her with fear, greed, or fake sympathy. "Yeah, it's got a motor, and it flies. Maybe I'll let you take it for a spin later." The kid's eyes went wide. "I like this one," she announced, then bolted back inside. "Grandpa, the lady with the race car chair is here." Santiago shook his head, but he couldn't hide the proud smirk on his face. "Sorry about that. Ever since her mom passed, the filter is gone. She just blurts out whatever is in her head. It's a lot." "It's refreshing," Regina said softly. "Where I come from, honesty is a liability." A moment later, Dionisio Herrera filled the doorway. He was 67, but he wore his years like armor rather than a burden. His hands were massive, knuckles swollen from decades of labor, hands that had stitched up more bodies than most people ever see. He stared right through her. It wasn't a casual look. It was an assessment that stripped away her defenses, making her feel small in a way she hadn't felt since she was a little girl. "So, you're the one my boy pulled out of the fire?" It wasn't a question. "Come in. We've got work to do." The place was modest, worn furniture, simple decor, but it felt lived in and warm. Frames crowded the walls, mostly featuring a striking woman Regina guessed was Santiago's late wife. In the corner, a small shrine with fresh marigolds and candles kept her memory alive. Dionisio ushered her toward a back room that had been transformed into a makeshift clinic. It was spare, an exam table, shelves groaning under heavy medical texts, and gear that looked like surplus from a field hospital. 30 years in the service, Dionisio said, catching her inspecting the setup. "I patched up grunts with injuries that civilian doctors had written off as hopeless. I learned one thing. The body can take a hell of a lot more punishment than the textbooks say. I also learned to spot when a wound tells a lie." He sat down, his demeanor shifting from fatherly to clinical in a heartbeat. "Santiago told me about the marks on your spine. I need to see them myself to confirm what he thinks he saw." Regina's stomach dropped. Being vulnerable in front of a stranger made her skin crawl, but remaining in the dark was dangerous. She made a decision. "Elena, wait in the hall." "But, ma'am." "Out, now." Once the maid was gone, Dionisio helped Regina transfer onto the exam table. His touch was purely professional, his calloused fingers tracing her spine, testing each vertebra with a mechanic's precision. The silence in the room was heavy. Regina could hear the blood rushing in her ears, thumping against her eardrums. Dionisio stopped. When he pulled back, his face was grim. "Santiago was right." His voice dropped an octave. "You've got 2 puncture scars right on your lumbar spine. They're faded, barely visible, but to a trained eye, they're as clear as day." Regina squeezed her eyes shut, feeling the floor drop out from under her again. "What are you telling me?" Dionisio helped her sit up before he spoke. "It means someone stuck a needle into your spinal canal and pushed a fluid in there. My guess is a neurotoxin designed to shut down motor function. The spasms, the phantom sensations you get, that proves the wiring isn't cut. The paralysis isn't structural, it's chemical." The words hung in the stale air, terrifying and thrilling all at once. "So my legs aren't broken. They were just turned off? I'm saying there's a very real chance you can walk again." Dionisio leaned in close. "But we can't do a thing until we figure out exactly what poison they pumped into you. I need your charts, blood work, scans, everything. From the day of the crash until this morning." For the first time in years, Regina felt a dangerous spark ignite in her chest. Hope. Actual hope. The kind you can touch. Built on hard facts, not the hollow guarantees of specialists just looking to cash a check. "I've got the whole file. Every scan, every lab report. Give the word, and my assistant will have the data here in a couple of hours." "Good. Now, walk me through that night again. Don't leave anything out, even the small stuff that feels irrelevant." Regina knit her brow, fighting through the haze clouding her mind. "It started with a corporate dinner," she began, straining to focus. "Valentina was there. So was Aurelio, our family attorney. We were toasting a major merger we'd just finalized. I had a glass of Cabernet, maybe 2. Nothing crazy." She trailed off, digging deeper into the memory. "But when I left, this wave of exhaustion hit me out of nowhere. Valentina offered to drive me, but I refused. I've always been too proud for my own good." "Did anyone else try to step in?" Regina concentrated hard. A vague image sharpened in her mind. "Aurelio. He walked me out to the parking lot. Claimed he wanted to check the ignition since it had been acting up. I was so out of it I just let him do it. I slid into the driver's seat. And then, lights out." Santiago and the old man exchanged a knowing look. So Castro had access. He had a window of time alone with the vehicle. Yeah, I guess he did. I popped back inside to say goodnight to the board members while he popped the hood, but Aurelio, he's represented us for 20 years. He's basically an uncle. Those make the most dangerous enemies, kid, the ones you trust, Dionisio muttered darkly. Before anyone could respond, the front door crashed open, cutting the silence. Shouts erupted from the living room. You can't just barge in here, this is private property. It was Elena, panic lacing her voice in a way Regina had never heard before. Santiago bolted toward the commotion, his father right on his heels. Regina spun her wheelchair around and pushed forward, her heart hammering against her ribs. The scene froze them in their tracks. Two strangers were standing in the middle of the humble living room. Sharp suits, polished shoes, but they radiated the cold menace of hired muscle. One of them had Elena in a vice grip while she struggled to break free. Miss Montalbán. The taller one spoke, his voice smooth and terrifyingly calm. Your family has been worried sick. Your father sent us to bring you home. Ice ran through Regina's veins. She recognized them. Her father's security detail, the men paid to keep the rabble away. I don't need a babysitter. I'm here. Right where I am. With all due respect, ma'am, we're not asking. The suit stepped forward. Mr. Montalbán insists. Santiago stepped between the heavy and the wheelchair, muscles coiled tight. She said she's not going. I suggest you listen. The intruder let out a dry laugh. And who are you? The grease monkey? You really think you can get in the middle of family business? I'll do whatever it takes to protect people under my roof. The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. Little Camilla, cowering behind the sofa, started to sob quietly. Dionisio scooped the child up, shielding her. Enough, Regina barked, channeling the authority she wielded in executive meetings. Tell my father I'll see him on my terms, not his. Not quite. The man fished a smartphone from his jacket. Why don't you tell him yourself? He dialed and hit speakerphone. After 3 rings, a voice Regina knew all too well echoed off the walls. Regina, darling. Federico Montalbán sounded concerned, almost like a loving father. What are you doing in a dump like that? I hear you're mixing with the wrong crowd. Father, I'm safe. I just need some space. Space. Federico spat the word out like it tasted sour. While you're out there finding yourself, people are talking. There's chatter about your accident. Chatter that could tank our stock and ruin this family. A cold shiver hit Regina. What kind of chatter? The kind that starts when a woman of your status starts poking around where she doesn't belong, asking about things that are better left dead and buried. His words landed heavy, ripple effects of threat washing over her. What exactly are you implying, Father? The line went dead silent. I'm saying some truths are dangerous, sweetheart. Come home. Forget this nonsense. Focus on healing with top-tier specialists, not backyard mechanics and washed-up therapists. Regina glanced at Santiago, then at the old man, and finally at the thugs waiting to drag her out. The realization hit her like a truck. He knew. Somehow, Federico Montalbán knew exactly what she'd found, and he was trying to shut her up. I'm not going anywhere. Regina's voice was ice-cold, sharp enough to cut glass. If you send another hired goon to track me down, I'm dialing the police. I'll tell them every dirty detail I've dug up about the crash. The silence on the other end was heavy, suffocating. You're making a mistake, Regina. Federico dropped the fatherly act. His tone turned to pure ice. A mistake with a price tag attached. Are you threatening me, daughter? Consider this a warning. You're messing with machinery you can't comprehend. There are people involved who kill to protect their assets, people far scarier than I am. The line clicked dead. Without orders from the big boss, the 2 muscle men froze, staring at Regina. You heard the lady. Santiago stepped into their personal space. Time to go. They bristled, looking ready to fight, but something in Santiago's eyes, a raw, primal warning, made them think twice. They released their grip on Elena and marched out of the house without a peep. The door clicked shut, leaving behind a heavy stillness. It wasn't peace. It was the low pressure drop before a hurricane, the moment before everything shifts forever. Shaking like a leaf, Elena rushed to Regina's side. Ma'am, what's going on? Why would your father— Because he knows, Regina cut in, her voice barely a whisper. My own father knows who crippled me, and he's been helping them cover it up. The wall she'd built for 3 years finally crumbled, and the tears came. It wasn't just sorrow. It was the gut-wrenching sting of treason, a pain too deep for vocabulary. Little Camilla wriggled free from her grandpa's grip and wandered over to Regina. Wordlessly, she grabbed Regina's hand, a gesture of pure innocence that didn't understand the evil of the world, but instinctively knew how to heal a heart. "Don't cry, Miss Fast Chair," she whispered softly. "Daddy says the sun always pushes through the clouds eventually." Regina stared at the kid. Messy braids, eyes full of a kindness the cruel world hadn't managed to steal yet. That's when it clicked. Giving up wasn't an option anymore. Not just for her own sake, but for the Camillas of the world, the ones who still believed the good guys win in the end. "Your daddy is a smart man, Regina," she managed to choke out. "I know," Camilla beamed. "That's why he's gonna fix your legs." "He fixes everything that's broken." Santiago knelt beside them, resting a gentle, calloused hand on Regina's shoulder. "Kid's got a point. You aren't fighting this solo. Not anymore." For the first time in 3 years, Regina Montalbán actually trusted a human being. Meanwhile, a block away in an idling sedan, a shutter clicked. The spy captured evidence that would shift the war, and that intel was headed straight to the last person on Earth who should have it. 3 days had bled away since the showdown at Dionisio's place. Regina refused to step foot in her family estate, bunkering down in a nondescript hotel under an alias. Elena had smuggled out the medical files and Dionisio was poring over them, hunting for the smoking gun. Santiago juggled the auto shop, his kid, and trips to the hotel where Regina sat waiting for answers that felt like they'd never come. Then came the morning that flipped the script. Regina's phone buzzed at 6 in the morning. Unknown caller ID, but a gut feeling told her to pick up. "Regina?" The voice was shaky, female, and hauntingly familiar. "It's Patricia. Patricia Vega, your old physical therapist." Regina shot up in bed, instantly alert. "Patricia, you vanished off the face of the earth over a year ago. You walked out on my recovery and ghosted me." I know. I'm so sorry." Patricia broke down crying. "I didn't have a choice, Regina. They threatened me. They said if I kept working with you, if I helped you get better, my family would pay the price." Regina's pulse hammered in her ears. "Who did this?" The silence stretched, heavy with terror. "Your sister, Valentina." The name hit Regina like a physical blow. "Impossible. Valentina is complicated, but she's not a monster. She's the one who hired you in the first place." Patricia cut her off. "I thought it was love too. A caring sister getting the best help money could buy. But 3 months in, when you started twitching your toes, when your nerves started waking up..." Patricia paused to catch her breath. "Valentina showed up at my clinic. She laid out photos on my desk, my kids walking into school, my husband at the office, my elderly mother buying fruit. She told me that if I helped you take a single step, those pictures would be the last memories I'd ever have of them alive." Bile rose in Regina's throat. The room spun. "Why are you telling me this now? Why break the silence after all this time?" "Because I saw the news reports. I know you're digging into the crash, and because Valentina came back 2 days ago, she wants me to go on record stating your paralysis is permanent, that you never had a chance. Her goal is simple. Crush your spirit until there isn't a shred of hope left." Regina gripped the phone until her knuckles turned bone white. "Talk is cheap. Can you actually prove any of this?" "I can prove everything. I have audio logs from every session. You were clearly responding to the treatment, Regina. There's footage of your legs reacting, moving on their own. And I have Valentina on tape making threats. I recorded her secretly as an insurance policy just in case things went south." Suddenly, the scattered pieces of the puzzle clicked into place for Regina. "Where are you?" "Hiding in a cheap motel on the edge of town. I'm terrified, Regina. I think I picked up a tail. I need someone to come get me and this evidence before they get to me. Give me the address. I'm coming myself." "No, not you. Send someone loyal, someone Valentina won't recognize. If she finds out I'm talking to you, I don't want to think about what she'll do." Regina's mind instantly flashed to Santiago. "I know just the guy. Sit tight, Patricia. We're getting you out of there." 20 minutes later, Santiago was tearing down the highway toward the city limits, phone pressed to his ear as Regina briefed him. Back at the hotel, Elena and Regina waited, barely breathing. "I'm pulling up to the motel now." Santiago's voice was tight with tension. "Place is in the middle of nowhere, only 3 cars in the lot. Stay sharp. We don't know who else is watching." Santiago killed the engine and headed toward the unit number Patricia had given him. He knocked 3 times. The signal. The door cracked open just an inch, revealing a pair of wide, panicked eyes scanning him. Santiago Herrera, it's me. Regina sent me. The door swung wide to show a chaotic room and a suitcase spilling clothes. Patricia looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Thank God you're here, take this. She thrust a thick envelope and a USB drive into his hands. Recordings, videos, it's enough to bury Valentina. But there's a bigger piece to this puzzle I found while digging. What is it? Patricia glanced nervously at the window, expecting trouble. Valentina isn't the mastermind. She doesn't have the medical background to pull this off. Someone supplied the chemical agent used on Regina. Someone with clearance for restricted narcotics. Who? Dr. Marcos Aguirre, Regina's neurologist. The ground seemed to drop out from under Santiago. The doctor treating her, the guy who gave her 6 months to live? I intercepted emails between him and Valentina. It's all there. Aguirre cooked up the paralytic agent. He's been dosing her to keep the paralysis active, making her think it's permanent when he's actually the cause. The sheer scale of the betrayal turned Santiago's stomach. Her own doctor was the jailer keeping her in that chair. We need to move, now. Santiago grabbed her arm, but as they swung the door open, 2 shadows blocked the exit. Aurelio Castro, the Montalbán family lawyer, stood there wearing that familiar serpentine smirk Santiago despised. Flanking him was a slab of muscle who clearly wasn't paid for his conversation skills. Mr. Herrera, Aurelio drawled with chilling calm. How convenient. You've saved us the trouble of hunting you down. Santiago stepped in front of Patricia, shielding her with his body. You're not laying a finger on her. How noble. The grease monkey playing the white knight. Aurelio chuckled, but his eyes were dead. Afraid there's no cliff to crawl out of this time. We're handling this professionally. It was you, Santiago spat. That night, you rigged Regina's car. You left her for dead. Aurelio's grin widened. I was just doing my job, following orders. The real architect is much closer to home than you'd think. Valentina, please, she's a useful pawn, but she lacks vision. She just wanted the CEO chair, the cash, the power Regina was born with and she could never earn. Then who? Aurelio tilted his head, weighing how much truth to spill. You really think Federico Montalbán built an empire on fairy dust? That a nobody family climbed to the top with just elbow grease? A cold shiver ran down Santiago's spine. Spit it out. Federico has partners, very powerful investors from way back. Partners who expected the Montalbán legacy to pass to someone. Who's more pliable than Regina, someone like Valentina who knows how to take direction. Regina is too sharp, too independent, a liability to certain interests. The accident was an elegant fix. Regina sidelined, but alive. A tragedy to garner public sympathy while Valentina quietly took the reins. No one was supposed to know, Patricia stammered, trembling behind Santiago, except Regina didn't die. She whispered the words, but the damage was done. And now she's figuring it all out. Aurelio looked at her with pure classist disdain. A sloppy mistake we are about to correct, starting with you two. The burly enforcer stepped forward to close the distance. Santiago calculated his odds in a split second. The rear window was their only prayer. Run! He roared at Patricia, hurling a heavy chair at the hired muscle to buy them a few precious heartbeats. He shattered the glass with his elbow and shoved Patricia through the opening first. Rough hands grabbed at his shirt, but he twisted free, hitting the pavement outside with a thud that emptied his lungs. No time to breathe. They scrambled up and sprinted like they had the devil at their heels. Santiago gunned the engine just as Aurelio and his partner burst through the motel's front doors. In the rearview mirror, he saw Aurelio raising a phone, calling in the cavalry. The envelope, Santiago barked, and the USB drive. You have them? Patricia nodded, clutching the documents to her chest as if they were a lifeline, which they absolutely were. We have to get to Regina right now. The drive back felt like a lifetime, compressed into 40 minutes of white-knuckled tension. Santiago steered with one hand while pressing his phone to his ear with the other, briefing Regina at breakneck speed on what he had uncovered. Aguirre is in on it? Regina's voice crackled on the line, a mix of disbelief and cold fury. My own doctor? The man I trusted with my recovery for 3 years? There is more, Regina. Aurelio talked about your father's old partners. Powerful people who bought into the Montalbán empire decades ago. People who want Valentina in charge because she is weak, because they can pull her strings. The silence on the other end was heavy, the sound of a worldview shattering. I need to speak to my father. Regina finally spoke, her tone shifting. Face to face. I need to know how deep this goes. Is he a co-conspirator, or is he being played just like me? "It is dangerous," she admitted. "Everything is dangerous now. But Federico Montalbán is my father. Before I burn this family to the ground, I need to know if there is anything left worth saving." Santiago screeched to a halt in front of the hotel with Patricia. They rushed up to the suite where Regina and Elena were pacing. The reunion was thick with tension and raw emotion. Weeping, Patricia handed over the tablet to show Regina the stolen therapy footage. On the screen, Regina watched the impossible. Her own legs moving, muscles responding to stimuli. Clear signs of recovery that had been deliberately hidden and sabotaged. "You could walk?" Patricia choked out. "You were healing, Regina. You were on the path to full recovery and they stopped it. They stole your future." Regina stared at the video, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. 3 years. 3 years of life stolen. 3 years believing she was broken, while her own sister and her doctor conspired to keep her a prisoner in her own body. "I will destroy them," she whispered, her voice like ice. "Every single one of them. But first I need to see my father." Santiago shook his head. "Regina, you cannot go alone." "I won't," she snapped. "You are coming with me." She looked at him with a resolve that brooked no argument. "You are the only witness to that night. The only one who can confront him with the truth of what really happened." Elena stepped in, anxiety etched on her face. "Ma'am, the mansion will be a fortress. Valentina likely knows Patricia's escaped. They will be waiting for her." "Then let them wait," Regina said. She spun her wheelchair toward the door. "Because Regina Montalbán is coming home. And this time, I'm not asking for permission. I am coming to take what is mine." As they scrambled to leave, no one noticed the small tracking device stuck to the lining of Patricia's purse, a device that had been broadcasting their exact location, since the moment Aurelio planted it during the struggle at the motel. Somewhere in the city, Valentina Montalbán was listening to every word through the bug's microphone. Her sister was coming to confront Daddy. Perfect. Considering Federico Montalbán had been in a medically induced coma at a private clinic for 3 days, a loose end Valentina had tied up without telling a soul. The trap was set, and Regina was wheeling herself right into it. The Bentley swept through the iron gates of the Montalbán estate at dusk. The sky was bruised with oranges and reds, as if the universe knew blood was about to spill, even if it wasn't the visible kind. Regina looked at her childhood home with fresh eyes. Every window, every column, every square inch of that manicured garden now looked like part of an elaborate prison. A golden cage she had mistaken for a home for 42 years. Santiago drove in silence, his knuckles white on the wheel. In the back, Elena gripped her phone like a weapon. Patricia had been left under Dionisio's protection with the evidence. This war was for the family to fight. "If this goes sideways," Regina murmured, eyes fixed on the sprawling estate, "Dionisio has his orders. He leaks the entire evidence file to every major news network in the country, all at once." "It won't come to that," Santiago replied, though his voice lacked any real weight. "We both know that's a lie, but I appreciate the effort." The car idled at the main gate, where 2 security guards Regina didn't know stood watch. "Fresh hires," she noted, "likely on Valentina's payroll." As Elena lowered the ramp, one of the suits stepped forward. "Mrs. Montalbán, your sister is expecting you in the study." "And my father?" The guards exchanged a quick, knowing glance that spoke volumes. "Mr. Federico isn't taking visitors right now." "Where is he?" "That's a question for Miss Valentina." Regina felt a cold knot tighten in her gut. This was all wrong. Her father was a control freak. He never ceded command of the house, and he was never unavailable to her. "Let's go," she commanded, pushing her wheels toward the foyer. The house felt unnaturally dead inside. The army of staff that usually bustled through the halls had vanished. Only the rhythmic click of Regina's tires against the Italian marble disturbed the tomb-like silence. Federico Montalbán's study was a monument to ego, lined with leather-bound volumes, family portraits, and the trophies of a life spent building an empire. But when Regina crossed the threshold, the patriarch wasn't the one waiting behind the mahogany desk. It was Valentina. Her little sister lounged in the massive leather chair that had always been their father's throne, legs crossed, nursing a glass of wine. She was dressed with calculated precision, wearing the expression of a gambler who finally held a royal flush. "Dearest sister?" Valentina smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "You finally decided to come home. Where's Dad?" "Straight to business. You never change, do you?" Valentina rose from the chair and sauntered toward the bay window overlooking the rear gardens. Santiago hovered close to Regina, every muscle coiled tight. Dad had an episode 3 days ago. His heart, you know. Years of running the world finally caught up with him. Regina felt the air leave her lungs. Is he dead? Not exactly. Valentina turned, and her tranquility was terrifying. He's in a private clinic, medically induced coma. Doctors say the odds of him waking up are negligible. What did you do to him? Valentina's mask of politeness cracked, revealing the rot beneath. Me? Nothing. He simply took too many of his heart pills. A tragic accident, just like yours 3 years ago. The words hung in the air like smog. You poisoned him! Rage burned in Regina's chest. Just like you poisoned me. Poison is such an ugly word, I prefer to say I hit the fast-forward button on destiny. Valentina returned to the desk and slid open a drawer, pulling out a manila folder. Dad was becoming a liability. He started asking questions about your crash. He got suspicious. He even hired a private investigator behind my back. She tossed the file onto the polished wood. The PI found the witness from that night, your grease monkey. She sneered at Santiago. Dad was days away from meeting him. I had to step in. Regina grabbed the folder with shaking hands. Inside were photos of Santiago, his shabby apartment, Camila at school, detailed reports on their daily grind. Federico had been hunting for the truth. Dad wanted to know what really happened to you. Regina whispered, the pieces falling into place. He didn't know. He never knew. Federico Montalbán is many things, but he's not a monster. He would never let anyone touch his golden girl. The venom in Valentina's voice was palpable. His precious Regina, the prodigy, the perfect heir, the one who had it all while I rotted in her shadow. This is about jealousy? Regina couldn't process the pettiness. You sentenced me to this chair because you were jealous? Jealous? Valentina slammed her palm on the desk. You have no idea what it's like to be the spare in this family. To be invisible while you soaked up every ounce of praise, every scrap of power. Her composure shattered completely. Years of festering resentment finally boiled over. I worked just as hard as you. I went to the same schools, got the same grades, but to him, you were the only one who existed. Regina this, Regina that. Regina gets the crown. And Valentina, she can handle the books like a glorified secretary. That doesn't justify what you did. Justify? Valentina laughed bitterly. I don't need to justify anything to you. Not when I hold all the cards now. Dad is out of the game. You're stuck in that chair, and I finally have what I deserve. You have nothing. Santiago finally broke the silence, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. We have everything on you. The recordings, the sworn statements, the entire paper trail. Walk away now, or by morning, the whole world knows who you really are. Valentina glanced at him like he was a stain on the carpet she hadn't noticed before. Oh, right, the evidence. You mean Patricia, those little videos, and Aguirre's emails? She tossed her phone onto the mahogany desk. I've heard every word. You know that tracker in Patricia's purse was the best investment I ever made. The blood drained from Regina's face. I already have a team at the old therapist's place waiting for your so-called backup to arrive. Assuming they make it there, neither he nor Patricia will be in any condition to chat. For the first time, Regina felt cold, hard panic. Camila is in that house, isn't she? Shame. The girl is just collateral damage, unfortunate but necessary. Santiago lunged at her, but before he could cover the distance, 4 heavy figures stepped out of the study's shadows. 2 of them pinned him down while the others trained their weapons on Regina and Elena. Did you honestly think I'd let you waltz into my home without insurance? Valentina strolled over to Santiago, who was struggling in vain. You've got guts, I'll give you that, but bravery without a brain is just suicide. If you touch my daughter or my father, Santiago snarled, fighting the grip on his arms, I swear there won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in. Empty threats, she scoffed. From a powerless man. She turned her back on him to face Regina. Now, little sister, we have business to settle. You're going to sign over every single share to me. You're going to publicly renounce your claim to the family empire, and then you're going to vanish. And if I say no, then I start with the girl, then the old man, then Patricia. And once you've watched everyone who tried to save you bleed out, I'll finally end you. Regina searched her sister's eyes for the girl she grew up with, any scrap of humanity, but saw nothing but a void. Why, Valentina? Why so much hate? Much. I always loved you. I tried to include you. Include me? Valentina practically spat the words out. You included me like a stray dog? A few pats on the head while you made all the real decisions. Do you know the humiliation of sitting in boardrooms where everyone waited for your voice while mine didn't matter? That wasn't my doing. It was Dad. Dad did whatever you wanted. The whole damn world bent over backwards for perfect Regina. Well, not anymore. Now the world bends for me. While Valentina poured out years of bile, Elena had been inching imperceptibly toward the exit. No one was watching her. She was invisible, just like she always had been, just another meaningless assistant. But Elena had shadowed Regina for 15 years. She knew every skeleton in the Montalbán closet, including the code to the panic room Federico installed after that kidnapping scare a decade ago. A room that nobody, not even Valentina, knew existed. Elena slipped through the door without a soul noticing. Back in the study, Valentina kept talking, too drunk on her own victory to spot the missing person. Dad's partners are already on board with me. They're practical men. They don't care who sits in the big chair as long as the dividends keep coming. And under me, they'll flow faster than ever. Who are these partners? Regina needed to keep her talking. Every second was a lifeline. Valentina paused to consider the question. Why not tell you? It's not like you can do anything with the intel now. She poured herself more wine. Investors who helped Dad build this beast 30 years ago. In exchange for startup cash, they get a cut of everything. But they have other interests. Interests that need a clean face. Money laundering. Regina pieced it together. The family business. It's just a washing machine. Among other services. Dad knew, obviously. He just chose to look the other way because the money was good. He was a hypocrite to the bitter end. And you're willing to keep that going? I'm willing to do whatever it takes to grab the power I was denied my whole life. Valentina took a sip. Enough talk. Sign the papers. She slammed a stack of legal documents in front of Regina. And if I sign, you let everyone go? Santiago? His family? Patricia? Naturally. Valentina smiled. You have my word. Your word means nothing. Then I guess we do this the hard way. She signaled one of the guards who pressed his muzzle right against Santiago's temple. Sign, or I start dropping bodies. Regina locked eyes with Santiago. There was no fear there, only resolve. A subtle shake of his head. Don't do it, his eyes said, no matter what happens. But Regina couldn't let him die, not after everything he'd sacrificed for her. She grabbed the pen. Regina, don't! Santiago screamed. Shut him up, Valentina barked. Sign it, sister. Regina's hand trembled as the tip of the pen hovered over the paper. One signature, and it was over. One signature, and Valentina won. But then, the room went pitch black. The sprawling estate plunged into a suffocating black void. What the hell? Valentina shrieked. The dark erupted with the thud of bodies hitting the floor and muffled shouts, until a booming voice cut through the noise, echoing from the old intercom system Federico had wired into the walls decades ago. This is the police. The perimeter is secured. Come out with your hands visible. When the backup generators kicked in a few seconds later, the floodlights exposed a total mess. Two of Valentina's hired guns were already face down and stripped of their weapons, while Santiago had managed to slip his restraints and pinned the third guy to the floor. The fourth mercenary was nowhere to be seen, likely scrambling for the nearest exit. Valentina darted her eyes around the room like a trapped animal, desperate for an escape route that had vanished. How? She stammered, her composure shattering. Elena stepped into the frame, flanked by uniformed officers, but the real shocker was seeing Dionisio Herrera standing there with little Camilla safely in his arms, shaken up, sure, but physically untouched. Panic rooms come with a hard line to the precinct, Elena said, a faint, vindictive smirk playing on her lips, and an external comms channel for emergencies. I dialed Dionisio the second I got inside. Your backup crew never even made it to the driveway. Valentina stumbled back toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching her empire turn to dust. No, this isn't real. A grim-faced officer stepped forward, unhooking the cuffs from his belt. Valentina Montalbán, you are under arrest for attempted murder, kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. This isn't over, Valentina screeched as the metal clicked around her wrists. I have friends in high places. I have influence. You haven't seen the last of me. As they hauled her out of the study, she locked eyes with Regina one final time. There wasn't a shred of remorse in that stare, just cold, unadulterated hatred. Santiago rushed over and snatched Camilla up, burying his face in her shoulder with such desperate relief that it brought tears to Regina's eyes. "You okay, sweetheart? Did they hurt you?" "I'm okay, Daddy. Grandpa Dionisio kept me safe. He promised you'd come for us, and you did." Dionisio walked over to Regina, his face grave but hiding a flicker of optimism. "While I was waiting for Elena to signal, I went through those medical records we seized. I found something." "What is it?" "I've identified the specific chemical agent they used to cripple you. More importantly, I know the counteragent." Regina felt the world stop spinning. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying there is a genuine chance you'll walk again, Regina. It's going to be brutal, and it's going to take a long time with zero promises attached. Do you want to try?" For the first time in 3 long years, Regina Montalbán felt a spark she thought had been extinguished for good. Actual, tangible hope. "Yes," she whispered, tears tracking down her face. "I'll do whatever it takes." However, as the squad cars hauled Valentina away and the adrenaline faded, nobody realized Aurelio Castro had slipped out during the commotion, nor did they see the text he fired off before vanishing into the dark. "Valentina is down, initiating Plan B. The truth about the Morrisons must remain buried." The Morrisons. It was a name Regina had never heard, yet it was about to rewrite her entire family history. The air inside the Santa Clara private hospital was thick with antiseptic and old money secrets. Regina wheeled herself down the 3rd-floor corridor, with Santiago and Elena keeping pace on either side, while 2 uniformed officers led the way to the suite where Federico Montalbán lay tethered to a bank of machines doing the breathing for him. It had been 48 hours since the raid and Valentina's arrest. 48 hours of police statements and shocking disclosures that had completely dismantled Regina's understanding of her own bloodline. Now, finally, the medical team had brought him out of the medically induced coma. Federico was coming back to them. As the heavy door swung open, Regina caught her breath. Her father looked small in the bed, pale and withered, surrounded by the rhythmic chirping of cardiac monitors. But his eyes were open, and the moment they landed on Regina, they welled up. "My girl," he rasped, his voice barely audible. You're actually alive." A lump formed in Regina's throat. After all the suspicion, the accusations, and the anonymous threats, seeing the patriarch of the family reduced to this frail state stirred up feelings she thought were long dead. "I made it, Dad, but only because of people who aren't part of this twisted family." Federico squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them again, the anguish in his gaze went far deeper than his physical injuries. "I know, I've been told. Valentina, my own flesh and blood, she's in custody. They have everything they need on her." "That's not enough." Federico tried to push himself up, setting off a cascade of angry beeps from the machines. A nurse rushed in, settling him back against the pillows and shooting the group a stern look before retreating. "Dad, you need to sleep." No time for sleep." Federico reached out a shaking hand toward her. "There are truths you need to hear, secrets I should have confessed years ago that explain every wretched thing that's happened to us." Regina glanced at Santiago, catching his subtle nod of encouragement, then took her father's hand. It felt cold and terrifyingly fragile. "Spill it, then." Federico took a ragged breath, scraping together the courage to dig up the skeletons he'd buried decades ago. 35 years back, I was a nobody. Just another dead-end bookkeeper grinding away at some import firm. I was starving for the break, desperate to build something of my own. That's when the Morrisons walked into my life. That name hit the room like a lead weight. The Morrisons. The exact name Aurelio had dropped right before he vanished into thin air. "Who exactly are these people?" Regina demanded. "Old money from Britain. They've got their fingers in pies all over Latin America. They came to me with the golden ticket, a partnership. Bottomless funding to launch my automotive dynasty. The catch? I had to give them a clean face for their dirty cash, classic laundering operation." Regina finished the sentence, connecting the dots Valentina had already laid out. "I lied to myself," Federico admitted. "Thought it was a temporary gig. Just until I made my pile, then I'd cut ties." "But people like the Morrisons? You don't just hand in your resignation." Federico's breathing grew heavy, rattling in his chest. "The day you were born, the reality of my mistake crushed me. Suddenly I had skin in the game. Real leverage they could use against me, and believe me, they never let me forget it. Every time I tried to pull back, they'd remind me they were watching. Your school, your hobbies, they were always there. Photos of you would show up on my desk. No notes, just silent threats. A cold shiver ran down Regina's spine. Her entire existence had been under a microscope, her life just a leash to keep her father obedient. Why keep me in the dark? Why? Federico broke down sobbing. Because I was terrified. Terrified they'd snatch you away or hurt you to get to me. I thought if I kept you inside the company walls I could shield you. God, I was such a fool. And Valentina? She was in on it? Federico shook his head. Not in the beginning, but 5 years ago, things changed. You started stepping up, taking charge. That spooked the Morrisons. You're too sharp, Regina, too straight-laced. They knew it was only a matter of time before you spotted the cooked books. So they turned Valentina, bought her loyalty with the one thing she craved, power. They promised she'd be the queen, not just the spare. Fueled by all that bitter jealousy, she took the deal. Finally, the whole twisted picture came into focus for Regina. All the suffering, the backstabbing, it all boiled down to petty greed and sibling rivalry, weaponized by a global crime syndicate. The crash was the Morrisons' call, Federico went on. But Valentina pulled the trigger, with Aurelio and Aguirre doing the dirty work. They needed you sidelined, not dead. A corpse draws too many cops. A debilitating tragedy was the safer play. And you were clueless. They swore to me you just lost control at the wheel, plain and simple fatigue. I was a wreck, barely human for months. While I was grieving, Valentina slid into the driver's seat, just like the puppet strings were pulled. Federico gripped Regina's hand, his strength defying his frailty. But a month ago, I slipped up on a clue, an email Valentina missed deleting. It flagged Aguirre and some ongoing treatment. That's when I started digging. I put a PI on it, but before I could make a move, she poisoned me, my own flesh and blood. Tears cut tracks through the grime on Federico's face. The baby I rocked to sleep. She looked me dead in the eye, handed me that coffee, and I drank it down without a second thought. The silence that hung in the air was suffocating. Regina stared at him, her internal emotional dashboard flashing red warnings she couldn't interpret. Fury at the lies, agony over the betrayal, and a dangerous sliver of pity. Where's Aurelio now? She finally managed to ask. No idea, but if he made it out, he's running back to Daddy. The Morrisons are his only shield. Federico's gaze turned desperate. Listen to me, Regina. The Morrisons don't stop. Valentina was just a pawn. With her out of the picture, they'll just find another way to bleed the company dry or burn it down. So what's the play? Do what I was too cowardly to do. Blow the whistle. Burn everything I built to the ground if you have to. Just cut the cord. But that torches your entire legacy, she countered. Federico offered a grim smile. My legacy is rot, honey. I poisoned it 35 years ago the minute I cashed their first check. You're the only salvageable thing left. He sank back against the pillow, the confession draining him. There's one more thing. About your mother. Regina froze. Her mom had been gone since she was 12. Official story, heart failure. Your mother found out about the arrangement. She stumbled on some papers I'd stashed away and threatened to go to the cops. Regina's world tilted on its axis. What are you trying to say? It wasn't a sick heart that killed her, Regina. The Morrisons silenced her, and I stood by and let it happen. The scream that tore from Regina's throat didn't sound human. It was the wretched noise of a heart shattering into 1,000 shards, the violent reopening of a wound she had fooled herself into believing was healed. Santiago rushed to her side, catching her as her body convulsed with uncontrollable sobs. Elena wept quietly in the corner while Federico, from his hospital bed, watched the devastating fallout of decades of deceit finally crashing down. I'm sorry, Federico repeated like a desperate prayer. I am so sorry, daughter. I'm so sorry. Minutes dragged by like hours before Regina could find her voice again. When she finally spoke, it was cold steel. Give me everything. Every document, every name, every transaction, everything you have on the Morrisons. There's a hidden safe in my office. The code is your date of birth. You'll find it all inside. Records of 35 years of business with them. Regina wiped her tears with the back of her hand. The woman who had entered that room no longer existed. In her place sat someone harder, someone who had touched the bedrock of pain and decided to burn it as fuel. They're going to fall. She pronounced every word like a judge delivering a death sentence. All of them. For Mom, for me, for every life they ruined. Be careful, daughter. They are dangerous. Well, I'm dangerous now, too. Dad, the difference is that I have something they don't. What's that? Nothing left to lose. She turned to Santiago. I need to get to my father's office, now. Regina, you just got hit with devastating news. Maybe you should— There is no time. Aurelio knows Valentina was captured. He's likely already flagged the Morrisons. Every minute we waste is a minute they have to shred evidence or vanish. Santiago nodded, recognizing the fire in her eyes. Let's go then. Before leaving, Regina turned to her father one last time. I am going to dismantle everything you built with the Morrisons. Every dirty penny, every corrupt connection. When I'm done, there will be nothing left of the Montalbán Empire as we know it. I know, and are you okay with that? Federico looked at her with eyes full of a love he had been too cowardly to show his entire life. I'm proud. For the first time in 35 years, I can say I am truly proud of something related to this family. Of you, Regina, of the brave woman you became despite everything I did to you. Regina didn't answer. She couldn't. The words were trapped behind a wall of emotions too complex to articulate. She simply nodded and wheeled herself out of the room. In the hallway, Dionisio was waiting with news that would shift the ground beneath them once again. Regina, I got the lab results. I analyzed the substance we found in your blood work and compared it to what Aguirre was administering. It's a neurotoxic compound designed to block specific nerve signals. But here is the crucial part. The effect is completely reversible. Regina felt her knees turn to water. Are you sure? 100%. I've seen similar cases in veterans. With the right treatment and intensive rehab, there is a very high probability you will regain full mobility in your legs. How long? Weeks? Maybe months? It depends on how your body responds. But Regina— Dionisio knelt in front of her chair, looking her dead in the eye. You are going to walk again, I promise you. The tears Regina had tried to bottle up spilled over again, but this time they weren't born of grief. They were born of something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Santiago took her hand. I told you I could help you walk, remember? Regina let out a laugh tangled with a sob. I laughed at you. I mocked you in front of everyone. I know. And when you walk again, you can make fun of me all you want. No? Regina squeezed his hand. When I walk again, the first thing I'm going to do is hug you, because you gave me back something I thought was dead. The faith that good people actually exist in this world. Camilla came running down the hall, having escaped a nurse's supervision. Dad, the lady with the fast chair, can she walk yet? Santiago scooped her up in his arms. Not yet, sweetie, but soon. You promise? I promise. Camilla looked at Regina with eyes full of childish optimism. When you walk, will you teach me how to drive your chair? You promised I could try it. Regina smiled through her tears. When I walk, I'll give you the chair so you can use it whenever you want. Camilla's eyes lit up like fireworks. That is the best promise in the world. And in that moment, surrounded by people who had risked everything for her, Regina Montalbán made a choice. She wasn't just going to walk again. She was going to run. She was going to hunt down every person who had destroyed her life and her family, and when she caught them, they would wish they had never heard her name. But first, she had a safe to crack and 35 years of secrets that were finally going to see the light of day. They remained completely oblivious to the fact that miles away, at a private airstrip on the city limits, Aurelio Castro was stepping onto a jet bound for London, his phone lighting up with a text from a burner account. Operation Plan B is active. The girl is the leverage. Secure her before the sun comes up. The target is Camila. This wasn't the end of the storm. The real turbulence was just hitting the fan. The call shattered the silence at exactly 3 in the morning. Santiago jerked awake, his heart hammering against his ribs as the device buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand. He didn't recognize the number, but a knot in his stomach told him ignoring it wasn't an option. Santiago Herrera? The voice on the other end was male, dripping with a clipped British accent that cut like a razor. We are currently in possession of something that belongs to you. If you have any desire to see your daughter alive again, you will follow my instructions to the letter. Santiago felt the world drop out from under him. He scrambled down the hall to Camilla's room. The bed was stripped, the window jarred open, and resting on the pillow was a handwritten note with coordinates and a threat. Come alone. If we spot a single cop, she vanishes off the face of the earth. The guttural roar that tore from his throat woke Dionisio, who rushed in seconds later, his face twisting in horror. Camila. They took her. Santiago could barely string a sentence together through the panic. The Morrisons have my little girl. The next 2 hours were a blur of suppressed hysteria. Regina showed up with Elena in tow, flanked by the heavy-duty private security team she'd kept on payroll since the Valentina incident. They alerted the authorities but kept them on a tight leash, hanging back just as the kidnappers demanded. They want a trade, her life for the contents of the safe. Regina analyzed the ransom note, her eyes cold and strategic. Everything I have on the Morrison dynasty. 35 years of dirt that could bury them. Just give it to them. Santiago looked at her, begging with his eyes. I don't care about the proof. I don't care about the Morrisons. I just want my child back in this house. Santiago, listen to me. Regina grabbed his wrists, forcing him to focus. If we hand over those files, Camila isn't safer. She's a loose end. Once we give up our only leverage, they have no reason to leave any witnesses behind. So what the hell do we do? Regina shot a glance at Elena, who gave a barely visible nod. We run our own play. The sky was bleeding crimson with the sunrise by the time Santiago pulled up to the derelict warehouse on the edge of town. He was solo, just as they asked, gripping a briefcase stuffed with the incriminating documents, playing the part of the defeated father. But the Morrisons had underestimated Regina. She had spent the entire night working the phones, waking up investigative journalists across 3 different continents. She had primed a media nuke set to detonate in exactly 1 hour, exposing every skeleton in the Morrison closet going back decades. They also hadn't counted on Elena, the invisible assistant everyone ignored, who had triangulated the burner phone signal the moment it connected to Santiago. Tactical units were staging 500 meters out, waiting for the go code. Santiago walked into the cavernous building, his legs feeling like jelly, but his resolve hardened into steel. The place was massive and gloomy, with dust motes dancing in the weak light filtering through grime-coated skylights. "Daddy!" Camilla's scream shattered his heart. She was tied to a chair at the far end of the floor, guarded by 2 hulking figures that stood as still as statues. Standing right next to her, Aurelio Castro wore that snake-like smirk Santiago had grown to despise. "Mr. Herrera." Aurelio strolled toward him with a performance of casual arrogance. "Punctual. I value that in a man. Let her go. Briefcase first." Santiago held the case out but didn't release his grip. "Camila comes to me first. Once I'm holding her, you get the papers." Aurelio mulled it over. "Fair enough. Bring her here." One of the guards cut Camila loose and shoved her forward. The girl sprinted toward her father, eyes swimming with tears, and collided with him, burying her face in his chest. "Daddy, I was so scared. It's over, sweetheart, it's over." Santiago wrapped himself around her, trying to absorb her trembling, engraving the feeling of her safety into his mind. Everything is going to be okay. How touching. Aurelio broke the moment. "Now, the payment." Santiago set Camila down, shielding her with his body as he slid the briefcase across the concrete toward Aurelio. "Here, 35 years of evidence. Now let us walk away." Aurelio snatched the case, popped the latches, and riffled through the files. His grin widened. "Exquisite. With this gone, the Morrisons can finally conduct business without Federico Montalbán's ghost haunting them." He snapped the case just shut and looked at Santiago with a mockingly apologetic shrug. "Unfortunately, I can't leave loose ends." The 2 guards raised their weapons. Santiago threw himself over Camila, bracing for the bullet. Then, all hell broke loose. The warehouse bay doors blew open with a deafening crash. Blinding floodlights washed out the shadows. Amplified voices boomed through the space, demanding unconditional surrender. Officers swarmed in from every entry point. Aurelio tried to bolt, but he didn't make it 10 feet. 3 officers tackled him to the concrete before he could reach the rear exit. The hired muscle dropped their guns immediately, and through the swirling dust and chaos, a silhouette stepped forward from the darkness. It was Regina Montalbán. But she wasn't trapped in that chair. She was upright, leaning heavily on a cane with Elena bracing her other side, but she was standing on her own 2 feet. Santiago stared, his mind refusing to process the image. How was this even possible? Dionisio had only started the regimen 48 hours ago. She inched forward, every shuffling step a declaration of war against 3 years of darkness. "He said my body would bounce back," she managed, voice strained, "since the damage wasn't permanent." The old man was right. She made it all the way to Santiago, legs trembling violently yet refusing to buckle under her weight. "I couldn't just sit there," she said, looking him in the eye. "Not while you put everything on the line for your little girl. Not after everything you gave up for me." Camilla's eyes went wide as saucers. "You're walking," she gasped. The lady with the fast chair is actually walking? With a grimace of effort, Regina lowered herself to one knee, determined to look the child in the eye. I am. And it's thanks to your dad, and thanks to you, Camila. You two showed me that decent people still exist. Camila didn't hesitate. She threw her arms around Regina with that raw, unfiltered affection only children possess. See? She whispered against Regina's shoulder. I told you my daddy fixes broken things. A sob escaped Regina's throat as she clung to the girl who had been the only spark in her darkest days. Yes, he does. And so do you, little one. So do you. In the weeks that followed, the Morrison dynasty came apart at the seams. The dossier Regina leaked to the press triggered a scandal that rippled across borders. Assets frozen in 12 countries. Handcuffs clicking in London, Madrid, and Buenos Aires. A criminal empire built over half a century crumbled like wet paper. Aurelio Castro got slapped with a 25-year sentence for kidnapping, conspiracy, and a laundry list of felonies that spanned 3 full pages. He stood before the judge without a shred of remorse, only seething fury that he'd been bested by a grease monkey and a woman he deemed an invalid. Dr. Marcos Aguirre was stripped of his medical license and dragged into court on charges of criminal negligence and conspiracy. His peers turned their backs on him overnight. He was destined to spend his remaining years drowning in lawsuits from the very patients he had sworn to protect. Regina Montalbán received a 15-year sentence for attempted murder, poisoning, and plotting against her own blood. Throughout the trial, Regina glanced at her sister exactly once. There was no malice in her gaze, only a profound sorrow for the sister she might have had, but never truly knew. Federico Montalbán turned state's witness against the Morrisons to save his own skin. He secured 3 years of house arrest, but the real punishment wasn't legal. It was the crushing weight of his own choices, a burden he'd carried to the grave. "Will you ever forgive me?" he asked Regina during a rare visit. "I don't know, Dad." Her answer was brutal in its honesty. "But I'm willing to try. For Mom, because I know she would have wanted me to find some peace." The Montalbán Empire was dissolved shortly after. The legitimate assets were liquidated, with every penny funneled into a new cause. Regina established a foundation in her mother's name, a relief fund for victims of corporate crime, helping those crushed by the greed of the powerful. And so, Regina started over. It was a smaller life, simpler in every way, yet infinitely richer in what mattered. 6 months after that dawn at the warehouse, a quiet ceremony took place in the garden behind Dionisio Herrera's home. It wasn't a wedding, not exactly. It was something deeper, a celebration of second chances. Regina walked through the grass without a cane or a helping hand. Her steps were cautious and deliberate, but they belonged entirely to her. Every footfall was a victory over the people who had tried to keep her a prisoner in her own flesh. Santiago waited beneath the old oak tree, the very spot where he had once confessed the truth about that fateful night. Camila stood beaming beside him, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked herself. "When we first met," Regina began, her voice steady and clear, "I mocked you. I humiliated you in front of everyone. I thought you were nothing. I thought a man like you had nothing to offer that I couldn't just buy." She paused, eyes shimmering with tears. "I was wrong about everything. You gave me the one thing my fortune never could, hope. You gave me the truth when everyone else was lying. You reached out your hand when the whole world had turned its back on me." Santiago gently took her hands in his. "And you gave me back something I thought I'd lost when my wife died." He looked deep into her eyes. "You made me believe I could still make a difference, that a simple mechanic could change someone's fate, that love doesn't care about bank accounts or wheelchairs." Watching from the porch, Dionisio let silent tears roll down his weather-beaten cheeks. Elena stood beside him, the invisible woman who had turned out to be the unsung hero of the entire saga. "Are you guys gonna kiss or what?" Camila blurted out, her 8-year-old patience wearing thin. "Because in the movies, this is the part where they always kiss." Laughter rippled through the garden, breaking the heavy emotional tension. Santiago looked at Regina, a silent question in his eyes. She smiled warmly. "Well, we can't disappoint our toughest critic." The kiss was soft and tender, filled with the promise of a future neither of them had ever dared to imagine. Camila clapped her hands, practically vibrating with excitement. "Okay, it's official. I've got a new mom." Regina knelt down, smoothly this time, no stiffness in the knees, and pulled the kid close. This little girl had owned her heart since day one. "I'm not a new mom, Camila. Your mom is always your mom, and she lives right here." She tapped the girl's chest, right over her heart. But if you're hiring, I'd love the job of best friend for life. The kind who lets you take the turbo chair for a spin. The kind of friend who gave you that racer to keep, remember? Camilla's eyes went wide. Oh yeah, best friend in the whole world. The party rolled on until the sun started to dip. Ruben had come straight from the auto shop, bringing along a few grease-stained mechanics who had witnessed that first messy encounter. Patricia Vega was there too, finally breathing easy, free from the fear that had choked her existence for years. Even Federico had been allowed on the premises, watching from the sidelines with a look of bittersweet pride. As the sunset started bruising the sky with oranges and pinks, Regina stepped away from the crowd and walked to the edge of the garden. Santiago trailed her. "Penny, for your thoughts?" He stopped beside her. "I'm thinking about everything I had to lose just to find what actually matters." Regina stared at the horizon. "I lost an empire, a fortune, a sister. I found out my father was in bed with criminals and that my mother was murdered." She turned to Santiago. "But I gained something all the money in the offshore accounts couldn't buy. A real family. People who love me for me, not for my net worth. The simple ability to walk on grass and feel the earth under my feet." She took his rough hand. "And I won you, a mechanic who looked at a broken woman and saw something she'd forgotten was even there. Humanity." Santiago pulled her in close. "You know what I really saw that night 3 years ago when I pulled you out of that burning wreck?" "What?" "I saw someone who deserved a do-over. Someone who, under all that armor of success and power, was screaming for a lifeline. And you saved me." "No, I just dragged you out of the fire. You saved yourself. Every hard choice, every ugly truth you faced, every step of rehab, that was you, Regina. All you." She smiled. It was a smile full of peace. The kind she had spent a lifetime chasing without realizing she needed it. "You know what I want to do right now?" "What?" Regina kicked off her shoes and let them hit the grass. "Run." "Regina, slow down. You just got your mobility back." The doctor said to take it easy. The doctor didn't spend 3 years trapped in a chair watching life pass him by while his body failed him. She took a step, then another, picking up the pace. And then, for the first time in 3 years, Regina Montalbán ran. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't fast. She stumbled twice and nearly ate dirt 3 times, but she ran with the wind in her face, tears mixing with laughter. She tore through that garden like she was using her legs for the very first time, treating every step like a miracle. Because it was. Camilla took off after her, squealing with joy. "Wait for me. I want to run too." Santiago watched them, his chest swelling with a happiness he thought he had buried long ago. Dionisio walked up to his son and squeezed his shoulder. "Your mother would be proud of you, son." "I know, Pop, I know." When Regina finally stopped, gasping for air and gloriously alive, Camilla slammed into her with a hug that almost knocked them both over. "You run super slow," the girl giggled. "Give me a break." Regina hugged her back tight. "I'm going to practice every single day until I can smoke you. You'll never beat me." "I'm the fastest kid in my class." "Guess I've got some work to do then." Santiago reached them, wrapping his arms around both to shield them from the rest of the world. "My girls," he murmured. "My 2 girls." And Regina, the woman who had it all and lost it all, the woman betrayed by her own blood, the woman who spent 3 years a prisoner in her own skin, finally understood what it meant to be truly rich. It wasn't the portfolio. It wasn't the power. It wasn't the empire. It was this. This unlikely family made up of a widowed mechanic, his 8-year-old daughter, a retired physio, and an assistant who turned out to be the bravest of them all. This second chance the universe had handed her exactly when she deserved it the least. The sun finally dipped behind the mountains, but Regina didn't feel the dark. She had found her own light, and this time no one was ever taking it away.